The unbelievable blip. Zarek sat at his console, staring at the vast emptiness of space. His patrol ship, the Vorlian Edge, was moving through the outer regions of the Dominion-controlled sector. It was supposed to be a routine mission, just scanning, reporting, and making sure no pirates or unknown ships entered restricted space. Nothing exciting ever happened in these parts. But tonight was different. A small blip appeared on his radar. At first, he thought it was a glitch, just an echo from the nearby asteroid belt. But the blip stayed there, steady and unmoving, like a ghost refusing to fade away. "Lieutenant, I'm picking up an unidentified signature," Zarek reported, his voice uncertain. Lieutenant Kren, his superior officer, barely looked up from his holoscreen. "Run a scan. It's probably a debris chunk." Zarek's fingers moved across the controls, running a deep analysis. Within seconds, data scrolled across his screen. His breath caught in his throat. "No, this is a ship." His voice was barely above a whisper. That made Kren glance up. "What kind of ship?" Zarek hesitated. The readings made no sense. The ship was massive, easily the size of a dreadnought. But it had no active power signatures, no communication signals, nothing. It was just there, floating like a ghost in the void. "It doesn't match any known Dominion or Allied designs," Zarek said, his hands slightly trembling. "And, sir, its materials. They match ancient human warships." Silence filled the command deck. Then, Kren burst out laughing. "Human," he scoffed. "Cadet, you've been reading too many old war legends. Humans were wiped out centuries ago. Their warships were destroyed. There's no way." "But look at the readings," Zarek insisted, bringing up the holographic projection. The massive warship was dark, its hull covered in battle scars. It looked old, but not lifeless. It wasn't dead. It was waiting. Kren's laughter died in his throat as he stared at the projection. The other officers on the bridge leaned in, their faces pale with disbelief. "This is impossible," someone whispered. A moment later, the warship moved. It wasn't drifting like dead wreckage. It was a controlled, precise movement, like a predator shifting in the darkness, aware that it had been seen. Alarms blared across the Vorlian Edge. Panic set in. "It's locking onto us." "Impossible. There's no energy signature." Zarek felt his heart hammering in his chest. This wasn't a legend. This wasn't a ghost. The human warship was awake. The bridge of the Vorlian Edge was in chaos. Officers scrambled to make sense of what they were seeing, their voices overlapping in panic. Zarek's hands were frozen over his console, his mind struggling to process the impossible. The extinct human warship wasn't just there. It was moving. Zarek watched the data feed as the warship adjusted its position with an eerie smoothness, as if waking from a long sleep. But how? There were no energy readings, no active propulsion systems, no transmissions. It was like the ship was moving through sheer willpower alone. "Confirm the readings again." Lieutenant Kren barked, his earlier amusement now replaced with cold dread. "Are you absolutely sure this is?" Before he could finish, the ship's hull lights flickered to life. Rows of crimson lights illuminated its surface, forming the unmistakable outline of an ancient war machine. The sensors screamed warnings. Every reading pointed to one chilling fact. The warship was powering up. "We need to report this to command immediately," one of the officers shouted. "No," Kren snapped, his voice tense. "We need to confirm if this thing is actually human before we start a galactic panic." Zarek didn't understand why the lieutenant was hesitating. The data was undeniable. The design, the material, the structure, everything matched ancient records of human warships. There was no mistaking it. But humans were supposed to be gone. Their fleets had been annihilated. Their worlds had been burned. The Dominion had seen to that centuries ago. So why was this ship here? Then the warship spoke. A deep mechanical voice resonated through the ship's communication channels. It wasn't a transmission. It was being broadcast directly into their systems, overriding their security protocols with terrifying ease. Identify. One word, one command. But it sent a ripple of fear through the entire crew. The Dominion had the most advanced AI systems in the galaxy, but nothing like this. This voice was old, ancient, even, but it carried a power that no modern machine could replicate. It wasn't a question. It was a demand. Zarek swallowed hard, his throat dry. Should we respond? He asked hesitantly. No, Kren said firmly, but there was fear in his eyes. We don't know what this thing is yet. The warship didn't wait for an answer. The lights on its hull shifted, forming new patterns, ones that matched old human military codes. Zarek's screen blinked with new information. His breath caught. Sir, it's scanning us. A cold chill spread through the bridge. No energy readings, no active transmissions, and yet it's scanning us. That's not possible, one officer whispered. Kren's fingers hovered over the defense controls. Prepare shields. Before he could finish, the warship vanished. For a full second, the bridge was silent. Zarek blinked at his screen, unable to comprehend what just happened. The massive ship that had loomed in front of them was gone. Where did it go? An officer stammered. Zarek frantically scanned the radar. No readings. No trace. Nothing. That's not possible, Kren muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. Then the ship reappeared. But this time, it wasn't in front of them. It was behind them. Every alarm in the ship blared in unison. Red warning lights flashed across the bridge. The Vorlian Edge's defense systems locked onto the warship, but no weapons were fired. The crew was too stunned, too terrified. How did it move like that? Someone gasped. It just jumped, but there was no hyperspace signature. Another officer stuttered. Zarek's hands trembled over his controls. It was playing with them. This wasn't just an ancient ship drifting in space. This was a predator, one that had awakened after centuries of slumber. And it was deciding if they were prey. Zarek's heart pounded in his chest as his fingers hovered over the console. The alien warship, the Vorlian Edge, was one of the fastest in the Dominion fleet. Its sensors were the most advanced in the galaxy. And yet, it had completely lost track of the human warship. That should have been impossible. The bridge was in utter chaos. Officers shouted over one another, trying to make sense of what had just happened. One moment, the ancient warship had been in front of them, and the next, it had vanished, only to reappear behind them. Sir, our scanners can't keep up with it. An officer shouted, panic creeping into his voice. It's moving in ways that... It's impossible. Another officer cut in, his voice cracking. No ship can move like that. No hyperspace signature, no energy distortions. It's like it's just blinking in and out of existence. Lieutenant Kren's face was pale. His rigid composure was gone, replaced by something Zarek had never seen before. Fear. That terrified Zarek more than anything. The Dominion prided itself on being the most advanced empire in the galaxy. The best ships, the best technology, the best warriors. And yet, here they were, outmatched, outclassed, and utterly helpless against a warship that wasn't even supposed to exist. Zarek turned back to his console. He needed to find some explanation, some logic behind what they were seeing. But the more he searched, the more impossible everything became. The human warship wasn't just an old relic drifting through space. It was fully operational. More than that, it was watching them. A new signal appeared on Zarek's screen. His stomach twisted. Sir, it's sending us another message. Kren clenched his fists. Put it through. Zarek hesitated but obeyed. The moment he did, the ship's entire system flickered. The lights dimmed. Consoles sparked. The screens glitched. Every electronic system aboard the Vorlian Edge was being hijacked. A deep, resonating voice filled the bridge once more. But this time, it wasn't just a single word. It was a warning. You do not belong here. The voice was cold, mechanical, and inhuman, but it carried the weight of something far older than anything in the Dominion's archives. It wasn't just a message. It was a judgment. Zarek swallowed hard. His hands were shaking now. He glanced at Kren, hoping for some kind of order, some kind of reassurance that they weren't completely doomed. But Kren didn't speak. He was just staring, frozen, unblinking, as if the very presence of this warship had shattered everything he believed in. Then suddenly, a new alert blared across the ship. The warship was charging its weapons. Zarek's blood ran cold. "Sir." "I see it." Kren snapped, his voice tight. "Defensive maneuvers. Now." The Vorlian edge lurched as the engines roared to life, throwing the ship into an emergency evasion pattern. But the moment they moved, the human warship moved with them. It didn't fire. It didn't need to. It was toying with them. Every time they tried to escape, it was already one step ahead. Every turn, every maneuver, it mirrored them perfectly, as if it could predict their every move. Zarek's hands trembled as he checked the readings. It's faster than us." "That's not possible," one of the officers cried out. "We're the fastest ship in the fleet. Nothing can match our speed." And yet, it was. No, it wasn't just matching their speed. It was playing with them. The warship could have destroyed them already. It had every opportunity, every advantage. But instead, it was just watching. Zarek's screen flashed with another incoming transmission. His breath caught in his throat as the warship's voice echoed through the bridge once more. "Leave." It wasn't a suggestion. It was an order. Zarek had never felt true fear before. Not like this. The Dominion was supposed to be the ultimate power in the galaxy. They were the rulers of all known space. But right now, they were just prey. And the hunter had decided to give them one last chance. Kren exhaled slowly. His hands curled into fists. His voice was barely above a whisper when he finally spoke. "Get us out of here." Zarek didn't need to be told twice. The Vorlian Edge's engines flared, pushing the ship into maximum thrust as it tore through space, desperate to put as much distance as possible between them and the warship. For a moment, the bridge was silent, save for the sound of their own frantic breathing. Then Zarek glanced back at his screen, just once. His stomach dropped. The human warship was gone, as if it had never been there at all. And yet, Zarek couldn't shake the feeling that it was still watching, waiting. For what? He wasn't sure, but one thing was certain. This wasn't over. The silence on the bridge was suffocating. Every officer, every crew member sat frozen at their stations, their eyes locked onto their screens, as if expecting the human warship to suddenly reappear. But it was gone, completely. No trace of its engines, no energy signature, not even a distortion in space where it had been. It had disappeared as mysteriously as it had arrived. And yet, no one felt safe. Zarek swallowed hard, his throat dry. His fingers trembled as he ran another scan, but the results were the same. Nothing. Lieutenant Kren exhaled sharply, running a hand over his face. His usual stern composure was cracking. Zarek had seen him face down enemy fleets without blinking, had seen him order brutal strikes on entire planets without a second thought, but now he looked shaken. More than shaken. He looked like a man who had just seen something that should not exist. Zarek hesitated before speaking. "Sir, what do we do?" His voice was quiet, but in the dead silence of the bridge, it sounded far too loud. Kren didn't respond at first. He stared at the main display, where the warship had been only moments ago. Then, slowly, he turned to Zarek, his voice colder than ever. "We do nothing." The words sent a chill through Zarek. "But, sir, you saw what it did," Kren snapped, his usual calm shattered. "That ship, it toyed with us. We had no chance, no countermeasures, no way to stop it." His hands clenched into fists. "If it wanted us dead, we'd be dead. If it wanted to cripple us, we'd be nothing more than debris floating in space. Zarek had no argument for that. The Vorlian Edge was the most advanced warship in the Dominion fleet, yet it had been completely powerless. If the warship had chosen to fire, they would never have even seen it coming. But instead of destruction, instead of an attack, it had given them a warning. That was what made it even more terrifying. One of the officers finally found his voice. "Sir, should we report this to High Command?" Kren hesitated, and that hesitation told Zarek everything. If they reported this, it would raise too many questions. The Dominion had ruled for centuries, spreading its empire across the stars, unchallenged. But this was a challenge. A warship from a race that had been declared extinct long ago. A ship that should have been dust and wreckage, lost to time. And yet it wasn't. It was here. It was watching. And it was stronger than anything the Dominion had ever seen. "If we report this," Kren finally said, "what do you think will happen?" The officer frowned. "The fleet will be deployed. The Dominion will want answers. They will." He stopped, because he already knew what Kren was going to say next. "The fleet." Kren let out a short, humorless laugh. "You saw what just happened. You saw what that thing did. Do you really think a fleet will change anything?" He shook his head. "No. If the Dominion sends warships after that thing, we won't be hunting it. It will be hunting us." A thick silence followed. The realization was setting in for all of them. The Dominion was used to being the predator, not the prey. But now, for the first time, they had seen something stronger, something older, something they did not understand. Zarek took a slow breath. "Then what do we do?" Kren's jaw tightened. He looked toward the screen again, as if expecting the warship to suddenly reappear. Then, his voice barely above a whisper, he said, "We leave. We leave and never come back." Zarek felt a shiver run down his spine. The Dominion never backed down, never retreated, never ran. But Kren's words weren't a suggestion. They were an order. Because whatever that warship was, whatever it represented, one thing was clear. The Dominion had never been the true rulers of this galaxy. They had just been lucky. And now, that luck had finally run out. The bridge of the Vorlian Edge remained in a stunned, suffocating silence, each officer too afraid to speak, too afraid to even acknowledge the truth that now loomed over them like a dark specter. A truth so terrifying that it threatened to shatter everything they had ever been taught, everything they had ever believed about their place in the galaxy, about their superiority, about their dominion over all other species. Zarek's mind raced as he tried to find any logical explanation for what had just happened, for how a warship from an extinct species had not only appeared in front of them, but had also demonstrated technology so advanced that it defied the very laws of physics as they understood them, moving in ways no Dominion ship had ever moved, vanishing without a trace only to reappear at will, shutting down their systems with ease, outmaneuvering them as if they were nothing more than insects scurrying beneath its notice. His hands trembled as he attempted to rerun the scans, to find any sort of trace, any lingering energy signature, any disturbance that could give them something, anything to work with. But every attempt came back with the same result. Nothing. No distortion. No hyperspace residue. No signal. It was as if the ship had never existed in the first place, as if it had been nothing more than a phantom haunting the void, a ghost from a forgotten war that had chosen this moment, this precise moment, to reveal itself to them. Lieutenant Kren stood still, his expression unreadable, his breathing slow and controlled. But Zarek could see the way his claws were gripping the edge of the console, the way his tail twitched ever so slightly. A telltale sign of unease, of barely contained fear that no amount of military discipline could suppress, because even Kren, one of the Dominion's finest officers, one of its most ruthless tacticians, had realized what they were up against, had understood the horrifying reality that none of them wanted to accept. The Dominion was not in control. The very idea was unthinkable. The Dominion had conquered hundreds of worlds, had crushed empires beneath its iron grip, had rewritten history to erase those who dared stand against it, had spread its influence across the stars, unchecked, unchallenged, unstoppable. They were supposed to be the apex, the rulers, the absolute force in the galaxy that dictated the rise and fall of civilizations. And yet, here they were, standing powerless before the shadow of an enemy that should not exist. Zarek turned his gaze toward the viewport, half expecting the warship to reappear, to finish what it had started, to erase them from existence as effortlessly as it had disabled their ship. But the void remained empty, dark, silent. And yet, he could not shake the feeling that it was still there, lurking just beyond the reach of their sensors, watching them, waiting for something, a reaction, a response, an excuse. A deep, unsettling realization settled in his gut. The warship had not attacked them. It had every opportunity, every advantage, every reason to wipe them from existence, and yet it had given them a warning. That meant something. Lieutenant Kren finally exhaled, his sharp eyes narrowing as he turned toward the crew. "We never saw this," he said, his voice low, steady, but carrying an unmistakable weight of finality, of command. "This warship does not exist. This mission was routine, uneventful. We detected nothing. We encountered nothing." The officers exchanged uneasy glances, some shifting uncomfortably in their seats, but none dared to argue, because they all understood what Kren was saying, what he was ordering. If they reported this, if they sent word to high command that they had seen an active human warship, a warship more advanced than anything in the Dominion's arsenal, it would trigger something that none of them wanted to be a part of. The Dominion would investigate. The fleet would mobilize. They would send warships, dreadnoughts, entire armadas into deep space, searching, hunting, trying to claim dominance over something that could not be dominated. And when they did, the humans, the ones who had been waiting in the darkness, preparing in silence, hiding their strength until the moment was right, would respond. Zarek swallowed hard, forcing himself to meet Kren's gaze. "Sir, if they're still out there, if they never truly disappeared, then what have they been waiting for?" Kren didn't answer right away. He didn't have to. The answer was already clear. The humans had been waiting for the Dominion to become complacent. They had been waiting for the right moment. And now, that moment had come. The silence on the bridge stretched on for what felt like eternity, thick with unspoken fears and questions no one dared to voice. The Dominion officers stood frozen at their stations, their eyes darting between their consoles and the vast emptiness outside the viewport, as if expecting the warship to materialize once more, to remind them that it was still there, watching, waiting. Zarek felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down on him, an unbearable force that settled deep into his bones. The Dominion had always ruled with confidence, with certainty, with the knowledge that no force in the galaxy could oppose them. But now, for the first time in his life, he understood what it felt like to be truly powerless. He forced himself to focus, to analyze, to find some rational way to explain what had just happened. But every theory crumbled under the sheer impossibility of the truth. The warship should not exist. The humans should not exist. The records were clear. They had been wiped out, their fleets obliterated, their worlds reduced to ashes. The Dominion's historians had ensured that there was no trace left of their civilization beyond rumors, old war stories, and the occasional wreckage found drifting in the void. And yet, here they were, staring at the undeniable proof that those stories were more than just myths. A flickering light on his console caught his attention, and his breath hitched as he realized what it was. A transmission. No, not a standard signal, not one of their own. This was something different, something ancient. It was an old frequency, one that hadn't been used in centuries, one that should have been long forgotten. His fingers hesitated over the controls. The Dominion had purged all human-related technology from their systems long ago, ensuring that nothing remained that could connect them to the past. And yet, this signal had found its way through. Kren's voice was sharp. "What is that?" Zarek swallowed hard. "It's an old war-era frequency. Dominion archives marked it as human military encryption." The room went deathly silent. No one moved. No one breathed. Even the hum of the ship's systems seemed distant, insignificant compared to the weight of those words. If this was real, if the humans were truly reaching out, it meant that they were not just ghosts lurking in the shadows. It meant they had chosen this moment, this ship, this crew, to send a message. Kren's jaw tightened. Decode it. Zarek's fingers worked quickly, his heart pounding in his chest. The translation took only seconds, but those seconds felt like an eternity. When the words finally appeared on the screen, his breath caught in his throat. It was simple. "We are still here." The moment the words appeared, the bridge's lights flickered, as if the ship itself had reacted to the message. A low hum vibrated through the deck, a pulse that sent shivers down his spine. It was almost as if someone, was reaching out, touching the very core of their ship, reminding them that they were no longer in control. Then, just as quickly as it had appeared, the message vanished. The signal went dead. The flickering lights stabilized. The ship returned to normal, as if nothing had happened. But the crew knew better. Nothing would ever be normal again. Kren exhaled slowly, his claws tightening against the console. No one speaks of this. Not now. Not ever. Zarek barely managed to nod. He understood why. If the Dominion knew what they had seen, if they knew that the humans had returned, it would mean war, a war they might not be able to win. But deep down, Zarek knew the truth. The war had already begun. The silence on the bridge was suffocating, but the weight pressing down on Zarek had nothing to do with the lack of sound. It was the realization, the undeniable truth, that the Dominion had been wrong. Humanity had not been wiped from existence. They had not been reduced to whispers in forgotten war records. They had survived. And not only that, they had returned. The warship's brief, ominous appearance had proven that much. But the message, that single sentence sent a chill deeper into his bones than anything else. "We are still here." The words echoed in his mind, each repetition making his pulse pound harder. He wanted to believe it was some kind of trick, some anomaly, some glitch in the system, but the logical part of him knew better. The Dominion had been too thorough in their purge. No remnant of human technology should have remained. No frequency left to transmit an ancient signal. Yet it had found them. Somehow, it had found him. Kren stood rigid beside him, unreadable, his talons slowly scraping against the metal console in a rhythm that betrayed his unease. The rest of the crew dared not move. They had all seen it. They had all felt the unspoken threat hanging in the air, the warning hidden beneath those four simple words. The humans had not spoken with arrogance. They had not declared war. They had not threatened revenge. They had simply reminded the galaxy that they still existed, and that, more than anything, was terrifying. Zarek swallowed against the dryness in his throat. His fingers twitched above his controls, hesitating. Every instinct screamed at him to erase the message, to wipe the logs, to pretend this had never happened. If the High Command learned of this, if the Dominion's rulers discovered that a human warship had revealed itself, that a living human presence had sent them a transmission, they would not hesitate to unleash everything they had left. They would burn entire systems just to ensure that no trace of humanity remained. But deep down, he wondered if it would even matter. If humanity had survived all these years, if they had hidden away somewhere in the void, waiting, preparing, what else had they been building? What other ships lurked in the darkness, unseen? What weapons had they forged in secret? The Dominion had ruled for centuries, believing themselves the strongest force in the galaxy. They had crushed species under their heel, rewritten history to suit their power, and convinced themselves that nothing could challenge them. But now, that illusion was cracking. A single ship had done this. A single presence had reduced an entire Dominion warship to a state of frozen fear. Zarek's breath came shallow. His mind raced with possibilities, with consequences. The crew would not speak of this, not openly. But whispers would spread. Rumors would slip through the cracks. Fear would take root in the Dominion's heart. And fear was the one thing they had never prepared for. He finally tore his gaze away from the dead screen, glancing at Kren. The officer's expression was unreadable, but his jaw was clenched, his eyes distant. He knew what this meant. He knew that no matter how much they tried to bury this moment, it would never be forgotten. The Dominion's greatest enemy had returned, and this time there would be no erasing them.